Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgic Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov short story. This one appears in the very first issue of this particular magazine known as Fantastic. You can see his name is on the cover there, but just his name. The cover does not refer to his story in any way. In the table of contents, it makes it clear that what if, no dashes, no question marks, by the way, by Isaac Asimov is on page 106. So let's take a look at page 106. And we have a little bit of additional material that is not reprinted. First of all, this first page, again, there's just what if, and there's some artwork with a little bit of things to say. So let's take a look. First of all, start with his husband and wife sitting on the train. They were sitting on the train when Livy asked, I guess that's Olivia, the wife, and she asked, alright, and the little man who sat across from them, there he is, with his little mysterious black box, what if, with his hat sitting on it. Okay. And the answer comes back as, showed them what if they had never met. And there they are. Now they're kind of walking in different directions. There's also a blurb. And I'll just read the blurb here. Whenever the role of competent writers of science fiction is taken, Isaac Asimov places high on the list. Not only have many of his short stories been anthologized, but his novels, The Stars Like Dust and Pebble in the Sky, at this point in time in early mid-1952, I guess we're just talking the new novels, not the reprints of older material like Foundation and Robot, were brought out by Doubleday and Company, publishers not given to grabbing just anything that comes along. While Dr. Asimov's forte, see now it's Dr. Asimov, okay, is the robot's place in tomorrow's universe, that must be I, Robot and some other stories, Earth is pretty small potatoes in stories of the future. He drops Metal Man this time to give you a tender and compelling tale of a married couple who wondered what if they had never met, and who found the answer to be strangely rewarding. So, it's a fairly straightforward story. The origin is kind of neat, though. A lot of times authors get asked by various people who aren't authors, so where do you get your ideas? How do you do all this? You have to get them from wherever, anywhere, and everywhere, just normal stuff. But up till quite some point, his own wife had not pressed him on this for, almost about a decade of marriage. His wife had never pressed him on that. But finally, one day, they're on the train from somewhere to somewhere, and I guess with nothing else to talk about, she turns to him and presses the question. So, I hope you don't mind my asking, but where do you come up with your ideas? And he's like, okay. I get it from anywhere, everywhere. Like, here we are riding on a train. And maybe it's kind of an interesting question. What would happen if we never met? And he starts coming up with this whole story. And he wrote the story. I'm not sure it exactly qualifies as science fiction per se. I'm inclined to categorize it more as fantasy. So, but I guess it could go either way. Because the little guy in there has a device. It's not quite a magic wand. It's like a little portable TV. Not all that different from the kind of devices we have today, by the way. Except that this one's able to show alternative timelines. Well, you gotta have that little science fiction-y detail. So, they remember how they did meet. It was also on the train, by the way. And he had just managed to get on. And turns out his wife, Olivia, and her friend Georgette were getting on the train. And the train lurched. And when Olivia tried to grab something on the roof to, stabilize herself, there was nothing there to grab, and she fell over right into, is it George? I think it's George. George's lap. I'm going to say George until I know for sure that it isn't. Hold on. Okay. Norman. No, not George. Norman. Okay. She fell in his lap, and basically a moment of, excuses me, turned it into a conversation, and next thing you know, they're hitting it off, and, well, they're off to an excellent start that continues all the way to marriage. Here they are 5 years later riding the train. So, well, that went really, really well. Georgette, meanwhile, had kind of hoped that she could be the one to monopolize him, but this accident had made it so that she couldn't do that. So, what ends up happening then is that, they met. But now the little man is saying, well, right, let's show what happened. We replay this episode. You get on the train. She gets on the train with Georgette. And the train jostles around. And Olivia reaches up. And the strap is right there and comes to her hand. She does not lose her balance. She just stands there. The train stabilizes. And she gets on with it. Georgette, by the way, is now able to take the situation well in hand and monopolize Norman for herself. So, next thing you know, it's like he's with Georgette. And then you have a little bit more. He looks a little more in the future and so forth, and sees he ends up marrying Georgette. Now, I like there's some kind of a nice human details, which is really great, and I kind of love it, coming from somebody who's basically a Jew, seeing this story, because, he's kind of asking all these what ifs, what if this, what if that, all these kinds of things. Okay, she says, like, well, if you hadn't been on the streetcar that day, you probably never would have met me. What'd you have done then? Well, stayed of naturally. Now, besides, I would have met you through Georgette another day. It wouldn't have been the same. I'm sure it would. No, it wouldn't. Besides, Georgette would never have introduced me. She was interested in you herself, and she's the type who knows better than to create a possible rival. Oh, what nonsense. Livy asked her favorite question. Norman, what if you had been 1 minute later at the streetcar corner and had taken the next car? What do you suppose would have happened? And he comes back with an interesting thing. And what if fish had wings and all of them flew to the top of the mountains? What would we have to eat on Fridays then? But we had caught the streetcar, and fish didn't have wings, so that now, I presume they didn't fly to the mountaintops. Now they were married 5 years and ate fish on Friday. And because they had been married 5 years, they were going to celebrate by spending a week in New York. So, they eat fish on Fridays. How very wonderfully. And it's kind of warms my heart of a nostalgic Catholic to say it's very Catholic. Fish on Fridays. And none of this, just the Fridays of Lent business. Sorry. You have this saying, real men don't eat quiche. Well, I don't know, maybe they do or don't. I don't know what they eat, but that's a saying, the idea is it's kind of wimpy kind of a thing. Real men are not wimps, right? And certainly in that sense, and I think in stronger senses that I discuss elsewhere, real Catholics, don't eat meat on Fridays pretty much all through the year. The only exception would be if some major feast fell on Friday. So that's pretty rare, but it does happen sometimes. And then you could, but you wouldn't eat meat the day before in that case. So that's how that would work. And so it's kind of a nice detail. In other words, Norman and Olivia, apparently seem to be Catholics. They don't eat meat on Fridays. They eat fish. You can say fish is a meat, but they don't eat red meats. I think is what they're really saying, and I think that includes poultry. So anyway, all that being as it is, it's kind of a cool, what if, and the idea is you have this destiny, you're destined for each other. So it takes on this whole different route. He does, in this little view of an alternate reality where they didn't meet at that point in time, he does end up marrying Georgette. but it doesn't work out. And at a party some year or two, however long later on, they're well, he spills something. Originally, he spilled some drink on his wife. In this case, he spilled his drink again on his wife, even though Georgette, not his wife, but on Olivia, who would have been his wife, even though now it's Georgette that's his wife instead of Olivia. Either way, he spilled his drink on Olivia. And actually, the next thing that happens is he follows her in the back room and promised to help, treat her to a new dress and all this kind of stuff like that. So, and they're off to the same thing. And Georgette doesn't care. In fact, it turns out she's kind of grateful to be rid of him. Divorce? Remarriage? I wonder if they still eat fish on Fridays. But it all ends with them on the same train. Here's where he would be. And then one of the interesting thing is, the first few times I read it, I missed this. This time I caught it. It's very subtle. You start with this couple they met on the train. And they see these alternate realities. And at some point, as they're seeing this glimpse of themselves on the same train, on the very same day, doing the exact same thing, the same people, sitting across from the same little guy with his magic what if box, and even seeing the same little crack in the glass window on the train there next to them, and yet suddenly they're kind of like scaling back and forth between being the picture and being themselves, and next thing you know, here they are, and everything's like it would have been where they met at that party where he spilled his drink on Olivia's dress. So, like I said, I wonder if they still eat meat on Fridays. Anyway, it's a cute story, a fun read. It's a relatively short one too, and made for actually a highly unusual and unique, almost unique, I think, Asimov story. Not too many like that. And this one was gathered, now with a dash after the name, in the Nightfall and Other Stories. So, there you have it. Thanks for listening.